All right, my young constitutional scholars, this is round one of the three branches of government. We're going to start talking about the legislative branch. Of course, we're looking at all three branches of government and how they work together, the legislative branch, the executive branch, and the judicial branch. But this one's focused all on Congress. We did it in class. If you missed it or you just want more, let's go. Article 1, the legislative branch. You have your Article 1 annotated. The only things you need in Article 1 to know are the ones that are actually have a little star next to them. Your target that you can describe and give examples of the structure, powers, and lawmaking process of Congress. So, we started by talking that Congress is bicameral. It has two houses, the Senate and the House of Representatives. Of course, that's because of the Great Compromise. I know you finished my sentence there. Provided by Roger Sherman at the Constitutional Convention. One house for equality, one house for population. That was the whole surf and turf. We started by looking at the House of Representatives. The House of Representatives is intended to represent the people. Therefore, it's based on population. It is the lower house. It has lower prestige. It has a 2-year term for every member, and every member has to be reelected every 2 years. So, John Dingell from Michigan was elected once, and then he ran for re-election and won a total of 28 times in order to serve in the House for 20 or 59 years. I think that's the number. There are 435 members. That number was capped a little while ago, and because it was capped, every 10 years they reapportion or they deal out the House seats to all of the states. You can see on this map from the 2010 census that a state like Texas grew in a lot of population right here. Florida grew in population. In fact, all of these southern states did. So they gained a representative. However, some of the upper Midwest states, and little old Louisiana, they ended up losing a representative. So the number of seats every 10 years could change in the House. This is what the House of Representatives looks like right now. You'll see that California has a large majority, or not, it's not a majority, but a large number. And if we drew a line, can I draw a line? Let's see. Line. Here's a pointer. Oh, look at that. If we drew a line like right through here, we would see that 12 states have well over a majority compared to the other 39 states. And here's little Wisconsin right here. Okay? So those states do have a majority in the House of Representatives. But because of political parties, they don't all vote together, so they don't own the House. In Wisconsin, representatives serve congressional districts. This is River Hills right here, where University School is. Many of you live in Mequon, which is right up here. I live in the North Shore of Whitefish Bay, and that's right up here, along with the city of Milwaukee and Bayside and Shorewood and Fox Point and all that. Down here, Kenosha, Racine, all the way to Janesville. Here we got Madison. You get the point. Menominee Falls, all that. Okay? So these are our 8 representatives. Many of yours is this guy, Glenn Grothman. Many of ours is Gwen Moore right here. Some of yours is Jim Sensenbrenner, of course, University School, Milwaukee Country Day graduate. And then in class, we talked about this guy, Sean Duffy, who actually resigned and he left Congress. And so he actually doesn't count. Interestingly enough, I didn't mention this in class because it just happened today, but a representative from New York just left Congress, and it's going into effect tomorrow, Tuesday, October 1st. These are what the districts are. You can notice that these small districts like mine in Milwaukee and many of yours, and if you could see right here, right, see that? That little thing, that green thing sticking out there, that little thing right there, that's River Hills. That is the 6th district. That's Glenn Grothman. This is Jim Sensenbrenner. All right. This district right here is represented by one person, and this district right here is represented by one person. That's because it's done by population. If you look at the map of the entire United States, it looks like it's more red, but that's because the entire state of Wyoming has one representative, but down here there's like 10 districts in California, probably even more, and right here, and they're all Democratic. So in reality, there are more Democrats than Republicans in the House of Representatives. The reason why that's important is because that determines House leadership. Whatever party is in charge of the House determines who their leader is. The Speaker of the House is Nancy Pelosi from California. She's a Democrat. She's the top dog in the House. She is second in line for the presidency. Vice President, then the Speaker of the House. She's the highest ranking female our country has ever had. She's assisted by this guy right here, Steny Hoyer. He's the majority leader. They represent the Democrats in the House of Representatives. They're the leaders. And currently, Nancy Pelosi is the one who has announced that they are going to push for an impeachment hearing for Donald Trump. This guy right here, the minority leader, that is Kevin McCarthy. He is from California, I believe, as well. I got to check that. Maybe he's from Virginia. Sorry. He's trying to make sure that the Democrats have their say in the House as well. Now let's head over to the Senate, the upper house. It's intended to represent the states. This is the New Jersey plan, trying to make sure everything is equal. Representation is based on equality. Every state gets 2 senators. That will not change. It's the upper house. It's the higher prestige. They're paid the same, but the senators are the upper house in part because they have a 6-year term, in part because they have 100 members, in part because the elections are staggered, so they never ever can have like a full change in the Senate, and in part because they do have a few more powers than the House of Representatives. Senators serve the entire state. These are our congressional districts for the House of Representatives, but the entire state are served by our 2 senators. We have Ron Johnson up here, and we have Tammy Baldwin down here. Ron Johnson is a Republican. Tammy Baldwin is a Democrat. That's one of the reasons why Wisconsin is a divided purple state. Right now, there are 53 Republican senators. There are 45 Democratic senators, and there are 2 independent senators that vote typically with the Democratic Party. If you want to look at how our nation is kind of split up, you see that Wisconsin is one of the few states that has both a Republican and a Democratic senator. That means we're a purple state. The reason why that's important is that means that the people of the state have voted across the board for both a Republican and a Democrat. And that means that that's a battleground state. A couple of you mentioned that term in class. That's a battleground state for the presidential election. In the Senate, we've got the President of the Senate, the Vice President of the United States. That's Mike Pence. We've got the President pro tempore. That's Chuck Grassley. You don't need to know their names, of course, for the bar exam. But he's sort of the temporary president. He's important, though, because the President of the Senate is the first in line for the presidency. The Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, is the second in line. Then the President pro tempore is the third in line. And the only reason he gets his position is because he's old. He's a senator, but still, just because he's old. The real guy that has the power in the Senate is the majority leader, Mitch McConnell, right here. He's the leader of the majority party, the Republican Party in this case. And the minority leader, Chuck Schumer, he is the one who's trying to make sure that the Democratic Party gets their voices heard. And as I said in class, one of those desks, this one right here, is all full of candy. Ooh, I love candy. In fact, I really love Jolly Ranchers. Peach Jolly Ranchers are my favorite. I do adore the Tropical Punch Now and Laters. Sometimes they pull my cavities out, but it's totally worth it. All right. Chocolate, I'm okay with. I like the Take 5, the sweet and salty, kind of tasty. Hershey's with almonds, much better. But I'm a big fan of taking a Hershey's bar and digging it into like a nice jar of peanut butter with chunky peanut. I'm sorry, I kind of went off on a tangent there. So ignore what I just said, but I think it's important information anyways. Now, all representatives and senators serve on congressional committees. These committees make Congress happen. Because if it wasn't for these committees, Congress would be at a standstill. They have so much to do, and there are, for example, 435 people that are in the House of Representatives. If each one of them introduces 10 bills in a year to become laws, that's 4,350 bills. Can any representative investigate all of those? No way, no how. So what a committee does is it acts as a filter. It looks at bills of certain topics. And most of the bills, it just gets rid of. It's really hard for a bill to become a law. I'll talk about that in a second. But these committees are important because they focus on certain issues or certain aspects of the job. These are the congressional committees right here. So any bill that comes up with something about science goes to the the House of Representatives Committee on Science. All right. Anything that goes to Veterans Affairs, there's a Veterans Affairs here and a Veterans Affairs here. Now, there's no Science Committee in the Senate, so it might go to Commerce, Science, and Transportation because they can do their own things, each one of these houses. All right. If it wasn't for these committees, it wouldn't work. Bottom line. Okay? Because now it should be time that you stand up and dance. Just give a little boogie, a little wiggle, do something to your favorite song. The music I listen to is probably a little different than yours. But now, let's talk about the powers of Congress. The job of Congress is to make laws, but they can only make laws about certain things. Those things are given to them in the Constitution that we like to carry in our back pockets, right? Now, some of the powers of Congress are enumerated or expressed. They are written down specifically in black and white. You can find them in there. They were made there in 1787, and they haven't changed. We've got our power of Congress to tax, the power of Congress to borrow money, the power of Congress to regulate interstate and international commerce. Huge power. The power to coin and print money, to declare war, to raise an army, to declare bankruptcy, to issue copyrights, to create lower courts, to standardize weights and measures, to naturalize citizens, and also a big one, that's Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17, to create a federal district for the seat of the government. That's Washington, D.C. We're going there in 200 days. These are a lot of powers. They're listed in there. We know they're there. We like the fact that the powers are listed because if the powers are listed, then Congress can't abuse or break their power. However, we added in the Constitution, thanks in part to my good friend Alexander Hamilton, ooh, very musical, we added this clause called the Necessary and Proper Clause. It leads to what are known as implied powers. These are powers that are not specifically written in the Constitution, but they're considered to be necessary and proper to carry out the powers that are in the Constitution. These are Article 1, Section 8, Clause 18. It should be highlighted in your Constitution, and that is called the Elastic Clause. Okay, this is the big way that Congress can stretch their powers. The example I used in class are stamps, but there are other examples. So take a look at this. Congress can establish post offices, but that implies that they can stop the shipping of certain items through the mails. You can't lie and try to steal money from people through the mail. It's called mail fraud. To establish naturalization laws, that implies that Congress can regulate and limit immigration. Think about what that means in our world today. To express the express power of raising armies and navies, that implies that Congress can have a draft. The Implied Powers Clause allows Congress to stretch their powers. Now, in there are two huge congressional powers, the power of commerce and the power of the purse. The commerce power basically says that Congress can regulate interstate trade. So think about it. If Congress can regulate things that are traded across state lines, these are some of the biggest companies in each state, that means Congress can regulate these companies. It gives Congress a ton of power. Anything going across state lines, like Major League Baseball, like music. I wonder what could happen with Amazon or iTunes or even YouTube. You could argue that YouTube is interstate commerce and international commerce. So could Congress tax those YouTubers? I don't know, but it seems like they could with the Constitution. I mean, some of these companies like Home Depot in Georgia, Johnson Controls in Wisconsin. Ooh, just do it. Nike. The other big power is the power of the purse. The power of the purse gives Congress the control of government spending. What that means is the government cannot spend any money without congressional approval. Now that doesn't mean like, oh, I want to buy flowers for the White House garden, I need to get Congress to approve it. That's not what it means. But it does mean like, I need a budget for the White House. Congress has to say okay. Now that's important when you think about military spending or spending for disaster relief or spending for exploration of space. Congress has to say okay. This gives Congress a lot of power. Congress can also propose constitutional amendments. Typically, constitutional amendments are proposed by Congress. Sometimes they're proposed by a constitutional convention, but that's really only happened once in the last 100-some years. Typically, Congress proposes amendments, and then they're sent to the states. What I want you to know about this crazy diagram is that amendments are proposed nationally, and they are ratified locally in the states. In other words, who gets a hand at them? The states, which means it's closer to the people. And that's 3/4 of the states. It's a lot different than the Articles of Confederation when you needed all of the states to approve. Now we just need 3/4. Congress also has some non-legislative powers that are totally in the news right now. Both houses of Congress can investigate government entities. They can investigate businesses. They can investigate organizations. Some of the most famous investigations were investigating Secretary of State Hillary Clinton about a private email server, investigating Richard Nixon about when they tried to impeach him, investigating Major League Baseball for the use of steroids, those kind of things. Congress can also impeach. That's what's going on right now. The House of Representatives impeaches or charges a federal official. This could be a judge, anybody in the federal government, except for somebody in Congress. In Congress, they don't impeach. They can just kick them out themselves. But they can impeach a federal official. The House does that, and then the Senate holds the trial. So right now, the House of Representatives is in inquiry about impeaching Donald Trump, President Trump. They are investigating him, and then the Senate will determine if he's guilty of any charges that the House comes up with. And then the Congress also confirms presidential appointees and treaties. These are jobs only of the Senate, so the Senate has a little more power than the House here. The Senate can confirm a treaty that the president makes with Iran. If the president nominated Jason Strains for Secretary of Education, Congress would have to say okay. Any appointment of an ambassador or an appointment of a justice, Congress has to say okay, and that's the Senate. So that's why the Senate is a little bit more powerful than the House. That's what makes them the upper house. So that, my friends, is a little bit of an overview of Article 1, the legislative branch. I hope this helps you as you learn about Congress, not only for this big honking bar exam, but also just because, you're part of America and I want you to be a good citizen. All right? So I'll try to do this for Article 2 and Article 3. And make sure you try to come to some of the review sessions for the bar exam. The bar exam, again, is on October 17th. Should be a good time. Hopefully you learned about Congress. You can use your knowledge to find out about the Constitution in Action, which is, the Constitution Today assignment where you got to find articles about Congress in action. The best way to learn about this stuff, honestly, talk to your parents, talk to me, talk to somebody. Read the news, watch the news, learn. Learning is so much fun. It's cool. It's great. It's awesome, right? All right. We'll see you later, my young constitutional scholars.